the Science of Entrepreneurship. I am your host, Gene.com, one of the panelists. We have Miss Terri Sherman, who's the business intermediary here. Also, Mr. Kamau, Primetime Foundation Leitner, entrepreneur, and our good friend Sherwood Brown, who is now the NWFL BBIC president. So in this climate right now, economically, and what we're facing with the coronavirus pandemic, I'm sure that many of you as business owners or entrepreneurs are wondering, what now? What should I do now? What can I do now? What am I faced with? These are all questions that many of us have as entrepreneurs. So again, thank you for taking out the time to carve out to be a part of our virtual. This webinar is going to be a lot of great information, and I'm going to stop talking and kick it off to Ms. Terri Sherman.
All right, thank you. And yes, thank you all for joining us. Just as an FYI, at the bottom of your screen, attendees, there's a Q&A button as well as a chat feature. So please be sure to introduce yourself in the chat feature so that we can see who's in the room, and you all can at least virtually connect with one another. And if you do have questions, there's a raise your hand feature as well. So we will definitely have an end of the session Q&A, but if you have a question that comes up in the meantime, definitely raise your hand so that we can address it, and we can unmute you. So we can certainly do that so that you can ask your question verbally, or feel free to leave it in the Q&A box. So let's see here. I'm going to share my screen to pull the PowerPoint up. So one moment here. And can everyone see the PowerPoint? Are we good?
Yes.
All right.
Good.
So this is, again, as Gene said, the Science of Entrepreneurship. What do I do now? So what I wanted to do was kick this off with 5 tips to help you stay the course in this time. It is a very stressful time, but hopefully these will help you to not panic as a current entrepreneur, even an aspiring one, and hopefully also give you some different perspective from kind of the doom and gloom. So the first thing is to not be the ostrich and bury your head in the sand. And of course, sometimes that's easier said than done, but now is not the time for you to do that. Now is the time for you to take action and treat your business like a business, as you've already been doing. So one thing you want to be sure to do is to document everything. Document, document, document. That's going to be extremely important for you, especially if you're looking to apply for any assistance. So keep that in mind. So particularly document how your business is being adversely impacted by the downturn or by the COVID-19 itself. So what you can do is track your ordinary income and expenses and your customer list to your actual, meaning what's happening right now that we're in the midst of this. So be sure that you're documenting these things, because again, it will come in handy for you down the line. Secondly, you hear me say this all the time about getting your financials in order and organizing your books, but I thought it would be useful to go into that in more detail and speak more specifically about what that looks like. So here's a list of what you want to have available at a minimum. Mr. Sherwood Brown is going to get into this further when he gets into the application processes, but for a lot of these various programs, if it's the SBA CARE Act, if it's the Florida Disaster Loan, and a lot of other financial assistance, it's pretty uniform across the board of what you want to have together. So specifically, you want to have at least your 3 years of financials readily available. Of course, if you have not been in business for 3 years, for the length of time that you have been in business, have those years available. So assuming you have been in business for 3 years, you want your 2016 and 2018 tax returns. And in this case, you want your business and your personal. Keep your personal on standby just in case. So if you're a corporation, S Corp, you'll have your 1120S and your 1040s. If you're an LLC, then you'll have your Schedule Cs. You also want to have your 2017 to 2019 profit and loss statements and your balance sheets. Also keep in mind whatever you have for a year to date for 2020, have those as well. And a good thing to do is to have your annual statement, so your full year, but also pull your monthly reports, because again, that will help with establishing trends and impacts. And we'll get into that a bit later as well. Me back up for the tax returns. The reason we said 2016 to 2018, most of us have not filed our corporate 2019 business taxes. If you have, take those with you. So just an FYI there. You also want to have a debt schedule to outline any of your current obligations. If you're not familiar with the debt schedule, on my website's blog, I have a link under a blog that will take you to a template for a debt schedule. And I'm also happy to email it to you. So if you'd like a copy of that, let me know in the chat box, put your email and just ask for the debt schedule, and we'll be sure to get that to you. You also want to have your monthly sales history for the last 3 years. If there's any insurance claims that you think may be coming up with this, you want to have those copies. And lastly, a financial forecast certainly does not hurt to have as well. So again, documentation and organization is going to be key in you getting the help that you need. So third, talk to your lender or your banker as soon as possible. So if you think you're going to be in need of any assistance, go ahead and make those calls and start having those conversations. Ask them specifically what programs are available to you. That's going to be your first stop. A lot of these banks and lenders, from what I'm hearing on various industry webinars that I've sat in on, they're really only dealing with their customers. So if you're already a customer with your SBA program or your commercial lender, you're in great standing. If you're not, you may or may not be able to get helped. But of course, we have other departments that we can plug you into if it's the SBDC or SCORE or someplace like that. So just let us know. Also, have your financials in order before you need to apply. That's why number 2's tip was number 2. This is going to improve your chances of moving to the top of the pile. There are going to be a lot of people seeking this help and making applications. So you want to make sure that you have everything together to strengthen your chances of getting what you need. So I love this quote, with organization comes empowerment. So just keep that in mind. Number 4, look for the opportunity and pivot where you can. Think outside the box. Now's the time. At least here in Jacksonville, if you're in Jacksonville on this call, or even other cities that I'm following on Instagram and social media, you're seeing how they're making pivots. So for some of the restaurants, for instance, maybe they've made the pivot to now become retail where they weren't before. So now they're retailing their cost of goods and various inventory to make up for the loss on the dine-in crowd. So whatever your business model is, look for the opportunities and make pivots if and where you can. And then lastly, try to focus on the positives. This is another quote that I love, and I've gone too far. Success is not final, failure is not fatal, it's the courage to continue that counts. So please, please try to focus on the positives. Know that you're not alone in this. And again, we're here to be a resource, and if we don't know the answers, I'm sure I can speak for our panel that we're happy to point you in the right direction. So definitely 5 things and little tips to keep in mind as we go through this. So with those things in mind, we're going to get into specifically the Florida Disaster Loan Program, and Mr. Sherwood is going to cover this. So we'll let you go from there.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. The Small Business Emergency Bridge Loan application is, as the name indicates, is a loan designed to help you get to the next point. However, it can be used as a long-term loan. And what I mean by that is the simple structure of the loan is it's a 1-year interest-free. And after that, they can term it out over 3 years. So think about that when considering this loan. The good thing about this, and I'm going to kind of draw on what Ms. Sherman just talked about a little bit earlier, but she indicated that, a lot of banks are overwhelmed right now, and they're not taking new borrowers at this time. And in order to get an SBA loan, you're going to have to go to an SBA lender. But with the Florida disaster loan, you're not borrowing from a bank. You're borrowing from essentially the state of Florida. So whether you have a banking relationship doesn't really matter. You go through that process with them. Now, not to get too confused, if you go further and get the SBA loan, you would have to pay off this bridge loan because it's considered to be a temporary loan, and with the SBA loan being a permanent loan. But I just want to throw out that caveat. Do we have the application up as well?
Yes, one moment.
So I want to walk you through some quick things about the application. First of all, I would encourage you to apply. There's a link now that you can apply online. Initially, some people were mailing their applications in. I can tell you that's going to delay you. If you can upload it online, upload your financials, and what you were saying earlier about having those tax returns together, having those, and essentially, I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but you have the application?
Here it is coming.
Okay, yeah.
Can we see it?
There it is, okay. Is that the end? It looks like the, yeah.
Yes, there we are.
Okay, so just a quick thing, the current maximum is 50, but you can get up to 100 under certain circumstances. What would, I can tell you, if you don't make $500,000 or more a year, you're probably not gonna qualify for the 100,000, because what we're looking at is quickly to determine what your economic loss has been. And if you've been historically making $100,000 or more per month, then it's somewhat realistic that you may have a loss at this point of $100,000. You would, as you said earlier, you need to be able to give a written justification of what your loss has been or what you expect your loss to be. There are some industries that are, such as construction, they're very busy right now. You know, most of them have continued. But what happens in 60, 90 days when all of your potential new clients aren't able to start their project because of what's happening now? So you may need to look at a forecast of, you anticipate lost business coming down the road, even though your people are going to work today, what's going to happen 60 days down the road. If you can slide up a little bit where you see the expected source of repayment, as I said, they expect you to take them out with either an SBA loan, other federal aid, insurance proceeds. This is the same loan that was used after the hurricanes. That's why that's in there, or a bank or other loan. But if you decide you just want this loan, you can do it. But just understand that a year after you've had that year of interest free, it's going to be a 3-year payout at 12%. But let's keep that in mind. I'm going to slide on up here, go through. Again, I said earlier that they give the address there to mail it, but I recommend that you upload it online. It's much faster. I've had some people who have applied, who've mailed their applications in weeks ago, and this, last week, and they still haven't gotten in. But those are doing it online and getting it much further. Anyone who owns 51% or more in the business will have to sign. We'll need their information as well. We'll need their personal tax returns as well, which means their credit will be pulled. And just real quickly on the approval process. And the reason why I have some insight on this process is because here in Tallahassee, basically the loan committee to approve these loans consists of bankers. And I'm one of those bankers on the committee. So I've seen the applications on the other end of the spectrum. And I can tell you, this is a very streamlined process. Basically, what we're looking at is their last 2 years tax returns, how much money they grossed, what their profit was or loss was, and what their credit score is. We're not getting into all of the different things that we would do if we were doing full underwriting, because it's a lot of loans that we're looking at and we're trying to get the money out on the street. Now, there are some advantages to that. There are some disadvantages. If you've made money over the past 2 years, if you have a decent credit score, say anywhere mid sixes and up, you're probably going to get approved. No questions asked, very easy. But if you don't have your financials, you don't have your tax returns for the past 2 years, or if you've had losses, or if your credit is not where it needs to be, the loan will probably be denied or conditioned. We've conditioned several of them, wherein one of those things wasn't where it needed to be. we have conditioned them, approved them for a lower amount. Now, that's our loan committee here in Tallahassee. There are at least 9 different loan committees throughout the state. They may do it differently. I can tell you that right now, there are about 370 applications in this portal to be reviewed. So it's going up every day. As this more and more gets out about this, it's going up every day. So just keep that in mind. If you don't get your response that you need right away, there may be a reason for it. I've already talked to you about what the terms, the rates are on the product if you decide to keep it. Because keep in mind, you can go to the next step and get the SBA loan that will take this out. Now, there's one thing about this. Your business must be, this is for for-profits only. So you have to be a for-profit business. There are some options for the not-for-profits, but we'll talk about that later with the SBA. But on this deal, and you have to have at least 2 employees. So if you're a sole owner, go hire your girlfriend or your wife or your husband or what have you, because you got to have at least 2 employees. And they do ask for documentation on that you either have a 1099 for those 2 employees, or if they're a W-2 employee, you should have a 941. So just keep that in mind. There are some you see here where it talks about the ineligible business. This is the same checklist you're going to see with the SBA deal as well. So unfortunately, if you're in any of these industries, you're going to have to get financing elsewhere because these are things that will disqualify you. And like I said, you're going to see these same questions if you go with the SBA product. You can move on.
Go too far there.
As she talked about earlier, just knowing your business, knowing your structure, that's going to make this process a lot easier. And I will say this too, if you get this information together for this application process, when you go, if you decide to go with the SBA deal, half of your work is already done because you've already pulled it together. So I can just echo what Ms. Sherman was saying earlier about document, have your ducks in a row, have your paperwork together. It's going to make the process a lot easier. Now, as I indicated earlier, this is the same program that is used after the hurricane. So some of these things may not apply. There's a question on here that asks number 14, amount of your estimated loss, and it talks about real estate, machinery, and equipment. Keep in mind, that's normally in the case of a hurricane. In this case, that may not apply, but you may have other damages that you've suffered as a result of either reduced traffic, not being able to operate fully, what have you. So some of this may not apply. Just keep that in mind. They still do ask that you have insurance, and then of course number 16 asks about your damages. And essentially, that's in a nutshell, the information about the emergency bridge loan. The good thing about it, as I said, is you don't necessarily have to have a banking relationship. You're borrowing from the state of Florida. Turnaround time, once your application gets in and gets processed, and it depends on your county. We've even had to, here in Tallahassee, we've looked at some deals outside of the county because other counties, such as Central Florida, they're a little more backed up than we are. So be patient with it, but I strongly encourage you to speed up the process, send it up a line. And obviously keep in mind that means you're going to need to have your tax returns electronically, so that you can easily upload them. I'll entertain questions later, I guess.
Okay, so then the next loan, thank you for that we wanted to get into, since you alluded to the SBA portion of this and what these different functions are. And now it's taking us all the way back. Let's see here. Is to get to that, since we're now talking about borrowing from the SBA versus borrowing from the state of Florida. Mm-hmm. So I just put some bullets here about the CARES Act program, specifically the Paycheck Protection Program. Did you want to speak on that?
Yeah, now the beauty of this particular loan is this loan, and as the name indicates, the purpose of this loan is to get people, to have people keep their people on payroll. That's what you're agreeing to do, that you're going to keep paying your people regardless of what happens. And what they do for you on that is people are always asking, are there any grants out there for small businesses? Well, Corona has brought you a grant, if you will, because if you maintain your workforce, then at this point, it's for up to 8 weeks. They will forgive anything that you spent on payroll, utilities, rent, or mortgage interest for that time period. They will reimburse that part will be forgiven. So this is the closest you're going to get to a grant, if you will. That's a loan that's going to be granted to you. There's another thing about it, as I mentioned earlier, the state program does not offer anything for not-for-profits. But as you see here, this one can be used for 501c3s or not-for-profits. The caveat is they must have employees, because that's the whole, the motivation behind this is to keep people working. So you definitely want to, and you would have to have been in business, as you can see there, when this whole thing started. But I think the biggest plus about this one is that part of your expenses can be forgiven. Now, I will tell you, it says 8 weeks, but if we look out 8 weeks from now and we're still in this crisis, I wouldn't doubt it if they would extend that further. They're just going based on what they project this crisis is going to last, but that may be extended. Now, remember with SBA loans, you have to borrow. The SBA does not lend money. They guarantee loans. So you're going to have to go to an SBA lender to borrow funds using the SBA guarantee. Now, Ms. Sherman, I sent you a list earlier of banks in the state of Florida that are SBA lenders. There are too many to spout out, but there are about 23 in Duval County alone. So you are a lot of SBA lenders in Duval County. Hopefully one of them is your bank, so that you can quickly go in and apply for that. But you can start the process for the payment protection program and the, there's another one out there. You can start that online, because what they're doing is they know that the SBA takes a while. Those loans generally take anywhere between 45 to 60 days on a good day to get approved. And you could be out of business, but they do have that $10,000 advance that could be available to you up as early as 3 days after you make full application. But you have to get started. So I would strongly encourage you to go to SBA.gov, start that process so that you can get in the loop, and then follow up with going to your SBA lender.
Definitely. What we can do too is make that list available to our participants that you sent. So we can definitely send that to you all. And then I know the other part of the CARES Act was the Small Business Debt Relief Program, where they're talking about covering loan payments on outstanding SBA loans, if it's a 7-day product, a 504, or a microloan, for up to 6 months.
Correct.
Interestingly, and we'll get into this when we talk about opportunities here in a bit, is that from what I understand, it's also available to new borrowers, for people taking out loans. So that's an opportunity for someone, which we'll get into again in a bit here. If you're looking to make an acquisition with an SBA loan, you may too be able to benefit from this as well. So something to keep in mind there. And I also have an overview, a PDF document of these programs. It's pretty user-friendly in terms of the layout, kind of easy to understand. And it also has some links within it as well that point you to the SBDC, SCORE, programs like that. And it also, I think, has a link to a list of lenders as well. So if you would like a copy of that, I'm happy to send that also. Anything you wanted to add to that one?
I would also encourage you to check in your various counties. A lot of them have incentive programs that are aiding in this entire effort. I know here in Tallahassee, there's a small grant. It's only about, I think, $2,000, but the caveat is you have to apply for one of these other programs, either the Emergency Bridge Loan or the CARES Act loan. You would have to at least make application, and then you can get this money right away. Again, the whole motivation is to keep businesses up and running, people, but this is quick money that you can get. So I would encourage you to check in your local municipalities and see what might be available.
That's a good tip for sure. So let's talk about future impacts. I know in my situation in dealing with business owners, a lot of the questions have been, well, what's going to do for my future business value now that my income's being wiped and my revenue's being wiped? So the reality is, I feel like the quicker we are to accept that, yes, your business revenue for this year is most likely going to be impacted in a negative, the better off we're able to kind of, be resilient in that and moving forward. So as Mr. Sherwood alluded to earlier, there are some industries that we know are severely impacted, the hospitality industry being one, but there are others that are thriving. Trucking and logistics, service businesses, people still need plumbers, people still need their ACs fixed and things of that sort. Manufacturing, medical, the list can go on and on. Even food trucks, I think to some degree, are probably seeing a boom here, at least here in our area. I've been seeing some that are going to various neighborhoods like mine. I live on the west side of Jacksonville, and we've had a couple of trucks come back here that have sold out in terms of their online orders before they even got to the area. So, again, look for the pivots and the opportunities, but most importantly, if you are impacted in a negative, don't take the position that all is lost for your future business value and for your future business. And the reason I say that is this is still a very new situation for all of us, still very fluid. As we can see, it changes, looks like hour to hour, day to day. But let's just assume that, things level out in the next 3 to 4 months. And then in 2021, your business revenue recovers, and in the years following. All of a sudden, what looked like, the end of the world for your business revenue this year doesn't look like that anymore. It looks like an outlier year, not a normal year. So keep those things in mind and keep your eye on the ball, because that means in the grand scheme of things, in a long-term sense, 2020 will probably not impact your future business value, again, assuming your revenue recovers and at least levels out in 2021 moving forward. And again, there will also be a reason as to why the sales dipped down in 2020. And that's the biggest piece for lenders, for buyers, is them wanting to know the reason why there's an abnormal year, and you being able to explain it. And clearly anyone can explain, because we're all impacted, as to what's going on. So also keep this in mind. In post-crisis climates, we'll call it, flat becomes the new up. So where typically in my industry, we're looking for business revenue to be increasing year over year, once we come off of something like this, if your revenue is at least just stable, that's a positive. So again, do not take your eye off the ball and keep these things in mind and continue to treat your business like a business. But also within this, new opportunities arise. So we wanted to talk a little bit about what those opportunities might be. So what's available? First, as an aspiring entrepreneur, we talked about the SBA CARES Act and the Small Business Debt Relief Program. Again, if you're looking to, buy yourself a job, essentially, there are going to, unfortunately, on the selling side, fortunately for the buyer side, be a number of distressed businesses that come to market, which means now you're able to probably acquire something at a huge discount compared to being able to do that before. So, again, let's just take a restaurant, for example. Perhaps they were extremely distressed during this time and decide, you know what, I just got to get out. I can't recover. But again, it's turnkey for you to launch your concept. And as I mentioned, there may be some SBA resources still in place at that time for you to take advantage of as a new borrower through the SBA. So keep that in mind. Also, if you're a current business owner, maybe the same thing applies. Distressed businesses, maybe you want to expand your current business footprint and acquire a competitor who might be going under, or some other, vertical add-on to your chain. So keep those things in mind. And again, take advantage of that Small Business Debt Relief Program as long as you can while it's in place. So we also wanted to ask from our panel for what opportunities they're seeing. you know, as Kamau being an entrepreneur in the area here in a number of different industries, what are you seeing as opportunities or impacts on your side?
I mean, to be honest, and thank you for the time, everybody. Sure, appreciate that information. But to be honest with you, we've had several situations where, can you all hear me out there?
Yes.
Yeah. It's been several situations that have arrived to this point. And I just wanted to speak to just two of the ventures that I'm involved with. One being my spa salon with Groom Therapy. The opportunities and the positive aspect is to be able to really focus on the customer intimacy and the service, being more on time with the infrastructure, you know, having your appointments when, you know, you can't have, you know, at this point, over 50 people in one space. And with Groom Therapy being a 3,500 square foot area, and we have different various tenants, it actually puts the pressure on the different services, the stylists, the barbers, the nail techs, the estheticians, to make sure that they're handling their customers in the right fashion, making sure they're in there on time and they get out when they need to, so it's not an overflow of people. Then you have the unnecessary attention on that space, and, you know, again, it helps out the overall service of the actual business. And then again, when it comes down to the overall impact, of course, we're going through, we're in a very tough space that, you know, some of the customers just don't want to take that chance. You know, they don't want to be in an area where, you know, who knows who they're going to bump into, and then that can easily create a more immediate spread of this COVID situation we have out there. So just on the positive side, we're able to focus more on the infrastructure, our policies, again, our communication, making sure everybody's, you know, being responsible and holding everybody accountable when it comes down to, again, our services. Then on the back end is, you know, we literally went down about, probably lost about 50% of business at this point. And that's just the reality of it all. But when it comes down to one of our night venues, XO Lounge, it's tough. When you're in the space where volume is key, when it comes down to liquor sales, when it comes down to entry in and out, we have bartenders that, you know, this is how they, you know, live their lives. We have barbacks. We have, you know, our food truck that was associated with our club business. We have cooks that are out of a job right now. So unfortunately, it puts us in that space to where we don't have volume. Our doors are closed. Luckily, the opportunity for that is to be prepared for when this ban is lifted and take the necessary measures so that when, you know, the president or the mayor, the government says, okay, in late July, everybody's back open, we're taking the necessary measures to meet and get prepared for when that happens so that we can get back to business as usual. So when you're dealing with a volume business, it comes with the territory. You know, we deal with hurricanes here in Florida and other natural disasters that affect us, and we kind of prepare for those type of things. But when you have a virus that, you know, it's just, we can't get a hold of it, and it puts you in those type of predicaments. So with that being said, and that's just being totally transparent and honest with the group here, you know, so when it comes down to the nonprofit, we just have to put a halt on serving in that particular space. But I have seen, you know, where these different lending opportunities are out there for nonprofits to take advantage of. So, like I said, I definitely appreciate that information, Mr. Sherwood. That's good stuff to be able to apply and be able to help out with the current space that we're in. So,
definitely. And Jean, I know with you being an honor personality and extremely connected to the community, are you getting any feedback from local business owners or people that you've come in contact with? What are their concerns, or where are they making pivots?
In respect of what Kamau was just explaining, because all of that impacts me personally.
Right.
With venues quite naturally being closed, and there's no volume per se for you to attract. So I, like any other entrepreneur, feel these other business owners' pain as to what tomorrow will bring, because there's so many different questions as it relates to the stimulus package that they're rolling out. Who's going to receive it? What do I need to do? And I thankful for Mr. Brown for shining the light for those who are on the call, because there are resources that are there. I think one of the things is, and it's probably in everybody's mind, we don't know when it's going to actually be over. We're saying, we keep getting somewhat of these fictitious deadlines, as to of hope of when the economy can open back up again and we can start back socializing again. I do think our governor here has us in mind here in Florida as it relates to it not being such an economical crash, but he's at the mercy of the country's leader right now. And we're all kind of just sitting and watching these reports. I mean, the last couple of weeks, regardless of anything that's been going on in our community or businesses that are closing down, the number one conversation has been the coronavirus and keeping ourselves social distancing. We've seen businesses here to echo what you said, closing. And I think a lot of the small businesses should be continually finding different ways to diversify to their audience. So if you don't have an online feature as a business, then now is the time to create that so that you can still do products and services to the market. Those that are in the food industry, if you could do carry out, take the carry out route. No, you might not be able to have the amount of people in that you would normally do. Just the main concern is, when will we be back at open capacity? And that's the question mark that nobody knows. And that's what makes it such, it puts the impulse on the panic, so to speak, because you don't know what's going to be available. And to think about, this is how I make my ends meet. And if I don't have that, then what? I do know that a lot of, and I'm switching hats now to the journalist side, a lot of creditors have reached out to those patrons who pay them on a monthly basis, whether it be credit cards or car notes or insurance, this, that, and the third. They have reached out to their patrons to say, hey, we offering relief. Most credit cards are not. They're waiving your payment with no interest. I know that most car loans are deferring for several months. And of course, you'll have to pay it on the back end, but it does give you the relief now with no penalty. So, thankful for that. And as a business owner, you can continue to have the relationship with your customers and have the commerce to continue without being fluctuated about the pressures of bills that you'll have to pay. So, that is a positive side to it. But I think the number one question is, when are we getting back to working capacity?
Definitely. Thank you for that insight. To our attendees, are there any questions or comments on any of this that you would like to add? And again, we can definitely unmute you if you would like to say anything verbally. Otherwise, you can put it in the chat.
One thing I wanted to add, to echo what he was saying earlier about you know, if your lender or your finance company, if they don't contact you, you make sure you contact them, because a lot of times, a lot of them are overwhelmed and looking at, I don't want to say the low hanging fruit, but they're putting out the fires right now. And they might not be thinking about your little small $300 a month car payment. You just, that I would encourage you to reach out to all of your creditors. If you even think you're going to have a problem, you may have the money in savings, but I wouldn't recommend you use your money in savings for that. Get what kind of relief you can get now, because you don't know how long this thing is going to go. My son is on Broadway in New York, and of course, you know what happened with Broadway. They closed it down. He immediately applied for unemployment. Immediately, even though he had a job, but it was closed down. And then later his union came back and gave him money. But had not he started that ball to rolling, he could have been without anything, and certainly can't come home here because he can't get out of New York right now. So I would encourage you, be proactive in that. Go ahead and jump on, you know, go down the list of everybody, not just your creditors, but even your utilities, cable, phone, etc. Go down the list and get that lined up so that, you know, it's not, don't wait. And I don't think they're going to turn your lights off anyway, but don't wait until you're worried about them turning your lights off. Be proactive. You never know what's out there until you call.
Definitely. Anything else from the panel?
I'm good to go.
All right, so I'm gonna add or share the screen again. If I can get back out of here just to share contact info here. So 1 second, let me go back to share screen. All right, so that way again, I don't know why it keeps taking us all the way back. Let's see here, hold on. Oh, Christina, thank you for the comment on the info. Glad that that's helpful. I'm gonna fly through here. Forgive me for this, but it'll have all of our contact info. So that way, if you do want to reach out to answer any questions, we are here again to be a resource. So you can certainly make note of that information. I added the Instagram, so for those that are on Instagram, if you would like email addresses, we're happy to provide it, whichever way is easiest to reach out. I'm sure we're all very accessible, and again, here to help. So thank all of you for your time. Thank you to the panelists for your time and agreeing to do this on such short notice as well. And yeah, if we don't have anything else, I think that's it.
That's it. All right. Well, I think if it's all right with you all, I think when we come out of this, then we come back and do another Zoom session.
Absolutely. Or even depending on, again, how long we are under this quarantine, you know, to run it back again. If we have any feedback from someone that maybe wasn't able to attend or would like to do it, if you all are open, I'm certainly open. And yeah, or even on some other topics. So for those that are in attendance, if you have any feedback, you should receive an email tomorrow. So if you do have any feedback, any questions, definitely feel free to send it to us. And yeah, we can certainly do this again.
Let's do it.
That's good.
All right. Well, everybody continue to be safe. You know, stay as safe and healthy as you can, you and your families. And we certainly wish you well. And
you as well.
Doing this again.
You as well. Hey, Kamau, I'm about to be over.
Come on over. It's raining outside now.
Thank you, Sherman.
All right, y'all take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.